Yep.
So Shriram, think we are live, so we can start, I guess.
Hey, hi. Welcome to the Mumbai AI Summit. This is Sriraman. I have four panelists with me: Vinayak, Rajeshri, Nitya, and Surbhi. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
So,
Hello.
a quick intro. I co-founder and CEO of a company called Agraya Technologies. We are all about voice, audio, and cloud. So that's a long list of things that we do. But today I'm here to moderate this session, right? So if you look at the turn of the last century, 19th century, we started with age of manufacturing, right? The companies that could manufacture were leading the business. It could be your Ford, Tata Steel, those kind of companies. Then we moved to age of distribution, like your Toyota, Walmart. They started with just in time and inventory management, getting things from one place to other as efficiently as possible. Then maybe about 30 years ago, it was all about age of information or 25 years ago, when companies like Google, Amazon started, and they were able to leverage information better to make the entire knowledge economy. But today we are in the age of customers. There is more than enough empowerment that is available to any end consumer today, right? And also for organizations, there is unprecedented level of information available. Initially, you could barely know about your primary sale. Today, you can learn about your tertiary sale, consumption patterns, where exactly your products are sold, how are consumers using it, how are they behaving it. But it has also led to a lot of customer empowerment. Customers are very, very unforgiving and also demanding, right? So this is the age of customers. And today we are talking about enterprise of the future, how AI, ML applied format or pure play, how can it help improve businesses and enabling better customer service. So I will open this with Nitya. So hi, Nitya.
Hi, Sriraman.
Yeah, so quality of AI depends on the quantity of training data they have, right, for any organization. So how do you see companies are using or sourcing data to start with?
I think I would like to take a step back and also talk about, the big point being quality versus quantity, right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not only quantity of data, but it's quality of data, which also need to be borne in mind. How representative is that data? How unbiased is the data? In the world of fake news, how trustworthy is that data? How does it factor various elements of the data? So we are in the business of selling data. So for us, that is really core. It's not only about the quantum, but it's also about the quality, and that is where AI, ML, etc. helps us in ensuring we have a right quality. So the training data set has also to be, of really good quality before, AI can be trained, right?
That's right.
Garbage to the exponential level will also result in garbage. So
Yeah,
I
Gigo.
guess that's the big point. Yeah, it's I think the most important point is to understand what data you have, how good is that data, and
Right.
then obviously more data is only going to amplify that in a in a better way.
So you
I think
said a
that's the
very
first important point.
important point about bias and reducing the garbage quotient of data. So as Nielsen, how do you bring reduce bias and bring the quality the importance of quality in your data?
Correct. And this is where, we've been in this industry for about 100 years. We are 90 years as of now. 1923 is when we started. And just before the Great Depression in 29. And what we are doing across the 100 countries we are, and we're actually going store by store to collect data in terms of, which products are being stored in which market. That's one of our businesses, if I may to say. Over the years, there are a whole lot of quality control metrics that have been put in. And it's like, just imagine a spatial station. It's like where the auditor is, you're actually able to see live, okay, what is the GPS coordinator, what has been entered, AI thresholds have been built on data which has been captured over last so many periods at such a granular level. So that is where AI is getting used. We're using AI and chatbots to ensure there is live on time, before things come into the system, there is a live trigger alert that kinds of, gets generated. So a lot of AI goes in ensuring you have the right quantum of data. That data has also got built when AI was not there by manual, fact checks, etc.
Right.
So I think it's the quality of data, it's the representative of data, it's the unbiasedness of the data, which plays a bigger role, I would say, and we need to keep a continuous watch over it. The other example that I would like to give is the way we're using machine learning for coding items. If you want to have a person, to kind of code each item, we're trying to build that into models so that you can reduce the cycle time, because, by the time you code and it gets done, it's already too late for the decision maker to take a decision. So these are the, the learning model has to be basis not only good quantum of data, and you can imagine quantum when we're talking Nielsen, right? You're talking peta, giga, I don't know the last, what is the newest term that has come in? We're talking about that across the world. Yeah, that's where we've reached.
So Nithya, if you are doing
so I think that is my 2 cents on it.
Of course, it's more than 2 cents, but if you're doing all the hard work, can companies simply buy data and get started with their AI journey?
See, it's different. Each company will be on their own evolution path. And I don't think there is one data set which can simply be bought and, fulfill that need. It's about understanding, understanding what is available. It's about, it's the era of fusion. It is not the era of a single, one piece of truth that is there. It's like you have to collect data across different sources and make sense out of it. It's about insights out of it. It's not about the data. It's about
the synthesis,
do with the data,
right?
Which is more important. Yes. And I guess that is where some of the data can be bought, some of the data needs to be harnessed, some of the data needs to be created. And I think it's about each companies need to understand where they are in that evolution and what is that space and architecture they need to build in order to gain advantage. So I think that is what my piece would be on it.
Right. So thanks, Nithya. So I'll just circle back to you in a second, but Rajeshri, hi.
Hi. Sorry.
How's it going?
Good. All well. Thank you.
Yes. So how do you see the industrial AI as the next revolution? How do you see it at Rolls-Royce?
Very interesting question. Thank you. See, if you look at industrial AI, it's definitely going to be transforming the way how manufacturing will evolve. So Rolls-Royce is high-tech industrial manufacturing organization. And today, everything is data-driven. Though we come with a traditional way of manufacturing our products or engines, it's definitely with the last 30 years, it's been a data-led and data-driven way of doing things now. And also we are further evolving as to how the co-creation and co-innovation should happen instead of trying to reinvent the wheel within our organization itself. And as the head of partnerships and ecosystem, one of my key role is to how to has been strategizing how we co-create and co-innovate through the ecosystem, leveraging the best of the best creme de la creme technologies, especially AI, advanced analytics, and seeing how we could approach the same problem and find a better, faster, and an effective solution so that we can bring value to the business. And today, if you look at in the current scenario as well, the way I see the future of literally every industry is going to be transformed. The way we live, do, and work in this world. It's not going to be the same. The new normal is going to come with a very different approach. Definitely, right. Technology is going to take the forefront. We are going to evolve in a lot more advanced technologies. Today, example, this conference itself, we're doing virtually in such effective manner. We are ensuring that we need to keep up the momentum of what we are driving and continuously having this knowledge sharing, and how each one has to be able to contribute for the better good of this humankind, industry, and everybody in general.
Right.
So in fact, as we speak, Rolls-Royce just last week did announce an very interesting initiative, Emergent Alliance. I'm not sure if you've seen the press release. We are inviting Alliance members to be part of a consortium for building predictive modeling and analytics, which will help industry, all the industry players, the C-level execs, government, everybody, for a quick decision making and a rapid response for aftermarket recovery on what and how the business will be impacted post-COVID situation. What is going to the industry look like? How do we help the industry to come back on track, and so on and so forth? So this is just the initiative which Rolls-Royce launched last week, and we are inviting industry collaboration, which is based on pro bono, and they will have to either share the data sets, resource, or even be able to bring up some challenge statements so that we all could collaborate and work together.
Sounds phenomenal. I am getting back to you with follow-up questions, but Nithya, I understand you have some time constraints. Any summary of insights before you get going? Like a 30 seconds round
I
of
think,
Nithya.
I think what, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me, guys? Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
so
yes,
I think, okay. So I think, AI, ML, blockchain, these are all the in things, but just take a step back, understand what's the need of the hour for your organization. Think about what's available. Think about the big picture and the architecture, and what do you want to gain the most from it before you embark on this journey. There's a lot of things available for us to readily deploy, but I think it's about understanding the nuances, understanding the implications, understanding the quality, and determining the outcomes. What outcomes are you chasing for? So just don't go for because it's cool, go for because it's worth it.
That's a wonderful summary, Nithya. Thank you so much. Surbhi, question right to you. How far away are any companies?
So much.
You're most welcome, Nithya. Surbhi, how far away are any companies using AI for mission critical deployment, right? So I'm not talking about 80% accuracy, 90% accuracy, but I'm talking about 100%, right? Let's say it's a bank. Even if there's a $1, ₹1 difference in my statement generated by an AI, I'm not going to be happy as a customer, right? So how far away are companies from using it for mission critical deployment?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think more so you would know it better. Banks and insurance companies were kind of the first areas where the adoption of AI started. And I think they have been the earliest in the entire curve to adopt not just chatbots or virtual assistants, but also conversational intelligence as a whole. And I think I can contribute a little bit more so from the perspective of conversational intelligence, how it contributes to business critical, which is now becoming mission critical due to all this new normal, where we have seen in the past couple of years that AI becomes critical in terms of compliance, fraud detection, real-time alerts on what is actually happening on the customer side, and how teams at the back end can be alerted in real time with 100% accuracy so that they can inform back actions and outcomes immediately. And as much as conversational agents are crucial for scaling interactions today, I think the adoption of speech to text and NLP, that I'm sure you would know equal, are enabling businesses to get these real-time insights into the ongoing conversations with customers on voice and text channels specifically.
Right. So what you're saying is what you're saying is with NLP and voice tech, conversational AI, there is already mission critical deployments that are live.
Absolutely. And I think additionally today more than ever, because millions of people are on remote platforms like Zoom, WebEx, and AirMeet, and we're a good example of being a part of that audience. All these critical business communications that are being enabled by these remote platforms, communication products are helping schools turn online, become online by themselves. Healthcare services remain available, onboarding state and local governments, agencies to serve people the most. And I think where it's becoming crucial now is how do we increase the efficiency of these communications, which have now evolved from normal face-to-face communications and become more and more digital. So I think we're not far away. We're actually in the center of the era, which is requiring these mission-critical deployments now.
Amen to that. Hi, Vinayak. Vinayak, we saw a large data company, Nithya, talk about.
Yeah. Hi, Sriman.
He spoke how Nithya and 90 years of legacy from Nielsen is providing data for companies to get started with their AI. Surbhi and her startup is already deploying mission critical stuff. So you represent Microsoft, arguably one of the largest company in the world. How do you see this AI application panning out between a startup and an enterprise? Is there like a David and Goliath kind of a scenario when it comes to innovation using AI?
Yeah, so a little bit about myself, right? Though I work for Microsoft now in a team called Microsoft Startups, we actually deal with startups. And almost through my 18-year career, I have worked mostly with startups. Right? So I've seen both sides of the table, right? So let's dissect that question a little bit, right? What do large companies have? Large companies have data. They obviously have a lot of researchers, like Microsoft has MSR, which is like done many breakthroughs in AI. There also have scale. Like any AI innovation you do can be kind of can be assimilated into many products. Can also be incorporated in very different verticals, right? For example, if we come up with a breakthrough in vision, it can be used from everything from agriculture to retail to e-commerce to logistics, right? So the scale is very large. And obviously, they also get to invest in platforms, right? And platforms are very hard to build because they require a lot of time, effort, money to do that. Now, let's look at the other side of the equation. The other side of the equation, we have startups. Startups, especially those in the US, you will see that a lot of the startups that are started are by people who have deep technical expertise, either coming from a company perspective or a corporate perspective, and then they are doing that startup, or they come from an academic setup where they have done some research and now they want to commercialize it.
Right.
They do have that tech talent. The other thing is also they are very nimble. They can fail fast and they can iterate fast as well. Also, what has also happened in the last maybe 5 to 7 years is there is a lot of open research out there, right? Like, for example, whether you look at data sets or whether you look at open source libraries, there's a lot that you can do to actually use. And what startups do is also they look at deep engagement and niche use cases, right? Like which maybe large corporates may not look at very closely. So this is, I would say, in some sense, I would say it's a David Goliath kind of situation. It's more like a yin and yang kind of situation, right? Where they're looking at two sides of the equation, and both have their pros and cons. So at Microsoft, for example, right? Like when I deal with startups, earlier, like when earlier in my career, we had to set up our own data center and do all the optimization. But you have a lot of stuff in the cloud, right? It's very easy to get started. We were working, for example, with a startup that was doing vegetable sorting, right? And earlier they would have to build all of that info. I mean, from the hardware that takes the photos to the network that pushes that to their data center. But now they just take the photos and they use cognitive services to do that. If they find that okay, this works well, then they invest deeper and come up with better models, and then they can replace those APIs. But the thing is, it's so easy to get started, right? So it actually gives an edge to a startup, so they can focus on what is like the incremental thing in that particular domain that they can do, which is slightly harder for maybe large corporations to do, right? But now once that is done, they can now collaborate with Microsoft, and we can either either we can acquire them or we can sell their solution bundled up. So we have a program called IP Co-Sell, right, where we actually work with startups, and whenever there's an RFP, we actually bundle the startups innovation or product along with our own, because a lot of the time in a specific sector we may not have the sophistication or the wherewithal to invest in that. So we actually have a co-sell program that does that. Another example of collaboration is in the case of because I said like large companies are actually good at platforms, right? Something like MSPs, right? When you deploy an application, it's very deterministic. So you know that even before you build it, how that application is going to look, how it's going to feel, how users are going to interact with. But with AI, it's very probabilistic, right? So there are three components. There's code, then there's data, the training data and the validating data, and finally there is the model, right? So how do you version each of these in unison? It's a hard problem, right? And when you work with the cloud or any kind of vendor, and Microsoft has its own solutions here, but you can actually plug into that and basically not worry about that factor and just use it as it is. Now, this was not possible earlier, and again, this is another way where the startups collaborate and kind of ride on the coattails of large platforms. Another example I would give is like in the case of MSR Tech, right? So we had a startup where the founders were from Cornell, and they were actually building a layer on top of app where they were targeting people who who were not very literate, but they wanted to have access to banking services. So they built a layer of conversational UI where MSR actually gave the IP for the speech pattern and built the voice engine, and also built iconography which people could see. So basically, you can talk to your phone and say, I want, in your local language, I want to make a deposit, and it will show off those icons where it actually shows those icons where you can actually click on them. Right. And this was again, part of it came from Microsoft, part of it came from the startup, and both of them together actually co-developed that, and it was co-licensed. So there are various modes of collaboration that are possible, between large companies and startups as well.
Excellent summary, Vinayak. I mean, the key takeaway I see is it's not a David Goliath, it is yin and yang. That's very well put. And the kind of examples you gave where Microsoft has enabled or bundled startups along with their platform play when a RFP comes, that's really a nice takeaway for every startup. It's music to my ears as well. Rajeshri, back to you, right? R Square, is that right?
R Square.
Right. How do you empower the ecosystem? Because we saw how many case studies Vinayak had to share. You want to tell how do you empower the ecosystem? Let's say you produce really advanced industrial machineries. These kind of data set like vegetable training data for vegetable and maybe much lesser consumer use cases. Yes, AutoML and other there could be available. But if I want to learn about aviation engine and data set for that, do you think R Square makes those kind of things available? How do you empower the ecosystem?
So just last year, Rolls-Royce they announced that they will be driving innovation from India, because reason being Bangalore is one of the high-tech hubs when it's coming to the startup ecosystem, especially in the emerging technology capabilities. And also, how do we take India to be a test bed? Because if you look at our industry, all the data is highly customer-sensitive data. So right. It's not so easily available like every other industry can share. We have a lot of data security and privacy policy that we need to adhere to, and what data gets shared and how it gets shared. We have to be highly sensitive, because right from suppliers to customers, there's so many different vendors, and how the data comes in different dimensions. So for us to manage all of that and yet do co-creation and co-innovation is a big step forward with an organization like Rolls-Royce, and how we're evolving in the journey of our digital transformation. Last year in India, they had announced the 10X Accelerator Program as the first initiative that was announced. And through that, we shortlisted 3 startups, PyChain, Clearcoat, and Imaginate, to work on 3 different problem statements of Rolls-Royce. This is like they get an exposure in working on the real-time problem statement.
Right.
No hypothetical here. So which means we then onboard them. There are a lot of things we have to go through. And it has also been a great learning experience, a journey as to how do we work, what kind of data gets shared with them, and then how we empower them to co-innovate along us. And some of the very interesting thing is the startups get a wealth of information opened up for them in terms of the domain knowledge, a new industry vertical, and how it is to work not with a normal software organization to do a POC, right? You're working with an industrial high-tech organization, which has never happened before. So for me, I see this huge potential, and it's a great time to work together, because everybody is evolving through this transformational journey. And I believe the future is it's a domain and technology together blending in, and having the right mix to deliver the right solution and bringing value back to the business with a faster turnaround time.
It's really fantastic, right? Imagine the kind of, you are a 2-3 member startup and you're working with a Rolls-Royce to solve a real-time problem. I mean, that's fantastic. This is the greatest time to be in a startup ecosystem, because all the largest of the largest companies are coming forward to help the tiniest of the upstart, right? So this is the greatest time to be in it. Surbhi, one question to you, right? How can, policymakers help or play a role, if you want to share some thoughts on that, right? So we have heard large companies here. Maybe what can policymakers do?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the key focuses of policymakers is for potential applications in the public sector. Some of those which I am seeing very commonly here, and specifically after the impact of COVID, is remote learning, remote governance, public safety, and specifically telehealth, which is very closer to what we are doing also in our company at this point of time. So just double dipping on specifically telehealth use cases, where we are seeing that there are problems related to reducing the cost of visits, increasing the efficiency of every visit so that every doctor can take more number of patients. And I think a lot of it is to do with the cost which is spent per visit for every single patient, and just enabling doctors with EHR solutions, automated scribes, in a way that you're able to lessen the cost in person and also on digital channels, and enabling more remote telehealth care. So those are, I think, some of the key applications. And we're seeing a lot of investment recently. I've been talking to a lot of telehealth products over the past 2 weeks after we released our new application in that space. And it's really interesting to see how they are scaling their efforts, not just on voice and video channels, but also on text channels. And just extracting information in a way that they can actually provide remote assistant for actually on the spot monitoring and stuff. So yeah, those are some of the key aspects.
Right. Thank you so much. We have about 2-3 more minutes for this session. So Vinayak, I'll start with you. If you want to give us 30-second sum up of how AI can help better customer service and what the future looks like.
So yeah, I think there are lots of ways in which AI can help customer service, right? I mean, so we talked about conversational AI, for example, that's there. Whether it is bots, that's another area where there is a lot of innovation happening. There's also on the other side. So I used to work for a company in the customer support space called HelpShift, where we actually empower the people who are actually doing customer service to figure out what are the answers that are more could be likely useful to the people that are doing. So I think there is a range. I mean, and it works across everything, like through voice, vision, text, and it is a two-way, right? The system also learns. So I think there's a lot of change happening in that area for sure.
Rajeshri, you want to give a 30-second sum up?
All I can say is the world is going to be transforming, and technology is going to be furthermore on the forefront, with a lot more advanced technologies coming ahead in the game, especially with AI, machine learning, including blockchain is going to be on the forefront, and everybody is going to use technology as the substratum of whatever that they do. And we need to embrace it right now and evolve through the journey, because the new normal is virtual reality.
Can't agree more. Surbhi, a summary from you, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been working in the age of, I think, chatbots and virtual assistants now for over, I think, 4 years. Now we're seeing a different shift of also making maximum use of human-to-human communications and conversations. And I think it's going to be an amazing time ahead to see how they both these worlds marry each other together. Where we are replacing human conversations with bots, but also augmenting humans when actually conversations happen between a live agent and a customer, or between two people. So I'm very excited to see what comes beyond.
That's very well said. So I'm going to give a quick summary. So what we heard today was Nithya was talking about how much data quality of data is important as much as the quantity is. Starting with AI, we know the 3 V's, volume, velocity, variety, but I think people keep extending that with 6 more V's now. But quality of the data is as important as the quantity, and reducing bias at the training level makes a huge difference. So Nitya had to say this. I am just summarizing for her. What we heard from Vinayak is there is huge collaborative environment already set. It could be an upstart collaborating with a Microsoft to take their product to the market, which also puts a nice validation or a stamp of authority when a Microsoft introduces a small startup to a large enterprise, right? So, and also what I heard from Rajeshri is there is a huge amount of collaborative mindset that's already in the industry, and Rolls-Royce is kind of making that happen, working with startups for giving them access to information which is otherwise supremely proprietary, hidden behind 25 NDAs. So it's a great opportunity for startups to collaborate, whether they are in an industrial space or maybe they are helping, a agro-tech or a food tech company sort vegetables with data. What I heard from Surbhi is conversational AI, applied AI is already empowering customer service. So we are in a space where there is AI is already deployed in mission critical solutions. So the world is not waiting for AI to take over, but it's already helping us live a better life. And my 2 cents would be that if you're new to building a product on AI, don't just think about flying cars. While that's like a epitome of imagination, I would say look at something as simple as the spam filters that we have in our inbox, right? The amount of AI it takes to sort a spam from a mail, which could be sent to many people, but it bubbles up as important as opposed to a spam which is also sent to many people. If you look at applied AI like your Alexa and Google Assistant or any voice tech platforms, making it conversationally friendly to people is all about it. The AI problem is solved by Amazon and Google. So there are enough and more use cases where AI and ML is readily available. All you have to do is build a consumer experience on top of it. So it is the greatest time to be a consumer, supremely empowered, have multiple touch points for customer. And also a great time to be a startup because every other large company is willing to help us out in a way, right? So these are my takeaways and these are my summary. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the summit. See you soon. Santosh, over to you.
Thank you so much. Maybe quickly, if we can grab a few questions. We have a minute left. So Sriraman, I think there are some questions at the question section. I think I'm just looking at the last one. Shankar says, how are enterprises going to make sure that the elderly do not get left behind in this age of transformation? Anyone wants to pick that up quickly?
Yeah, Surbhi, you want to go for it?
Yeah, sure. I think elderlies are never behind. You know how quickly our grandparents adapted to WhatsApp and Facebook. So I think it's a role of not just the people who are enabling these technologies, but also the people who are adopting to make sure that there are no biases in the consumers and there are different user experiences for different segmentation. So I think as Sriraman was mentioning, on focusing on consumer experience and user experience, it's so important to segment that by age, industry, location, geographic areas, and to be able to design a very friendly and approachable and explainable AI for everyone.
Sure. Thank you so much. So quickly, I'll just move to the other interesting developments for enabling empathy in customer service channels. Who wants to pick it up?
Vinayak?
Yes, please.
You have dealt with a lot of startups. Also said about customer experience, so maybe you should answer it. Interesting development for enabling empathy in customer service.
Yeah, so I've seen various startups apply it in various sense. Right, I gave the example of a startup that actually is looking at underserviced markets, like for example, bringing banking to the underserved people as well. And also, what we are seeing is when it comes to empathy, right? Like, so we want to empower the agent as well, right? So whenever it comes to, like, for example, answering questions or suggesting answers, right? So we have to look at what are the possible things that are done, right? For example, in the case of one of the startups that I used to work for, we had, based on the customer profile, right, how long the customer has been with us, how frequently he has interacted with us, how much he has spent along with us. So if we know he's a loyal customer, we had different tiers, and based on the tiers, we could actually, if he doesn't get a great experience, we could actually, waive off some of his charges. We could also give him a delightful gift, which he least expected, right? So it's kind of, AI not only is like helping, make the conversation easier or helping the agent, but also building the customer profile and making it relevant, and then basically giving rewards and thresholds where people can then, the humans can figure out, okay, this guy looks like genuine. He makes the decision, but the AI and the tools empower him to do that. So there are many ways in which you can do that.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. We have one last question from Ajay himself. So Ajay is on stage right now.
Yeah.
Yes, Ajay.
Okay, so I'm actually reading out a question from someone who has posted it for Vinayak and Rajeshri. What has been the average conversion rate from POCs to a scaled implementation in cases relating to AI that you might have come across?
Okay, very interesting question. Okay, I will answer in a slightly different. I'll answer from our industry perspective, right? If you look at the POCs, that's what I keep reiterating when I'm working, when I have to talk to the startups and work with them. One is, first, they need to identify and understand who they are actually going to work with, what is the kind of POC that they're doing, and why they are doing. Now, if it's a software company or you're talking about other industries, I think the conversion is much faster, and it's easily, you can do a POC very, especially with the software organization. Since I work for IBM, I've been a long timer there. You can do a POC pretty fast, show the proof of it, and then take it to the head, the business head, and saying why it is important if we need to adapt or implement it. So it's quite faster as long as we have a justification, we have an ROI number, everything else. But if you today look at it with Rolls-Royce, I keep saying the same thing back to everybody in the industry. We are not a software development company. We are a high-tech industrial manufacturing organization. And here, which means if you're doing a proof of concept, it is to understand what, how it can be, how it is going to help business address some of the challenging pain points that they have. The second thing is how much of value and impact we will bring to the company in terms of cost saving, increased productivity, and efficiency. The next aspect is how, if we have to even think about the integration, is the technology interoperable? That's more important, because we cannot today remove our existing legacy system and say, no, we just have to change the whole thing. No. Any transformation means it's retrofitting, interoperability, restructuring, and reconstructing. It's not about building anything from scratch. Or you can just say that, yeah, this is good now, we need to adapt everything. It doesn't work like that. There are going to be legacy systems, and the interoperability has to be factored into. And that is quite critical. And today, if you look at the startups, not everybody is there yet. And that is a challenge I see, whether it is I work for a software company or with Rolls-Royce, I still see that there's a huge gap. And this is something the startup need to very, they have to very religiously look into. How do they become value to an organization from the technology that they're developing or the product and solutions that they're bringing to the table?
Yeah, so if I were to quickly answer that in 30 seconds, so I would flip the question and say what are enterprises doing to solve this problem, right? My advice to startups always has been not to do any free POCs. Let enterprises pay for it, especially in Indian context. And we recently, to talk about that, I mean, putting where our mouth is, we launched this program called 100 by 100 by 100, where and I know the name is very catchy, but what we are saying is 100 corporates sign up with us, and Microsoft being one of them, give 100K worth of USD worth of contracts. That is the average contract value to 100 startups that are in that space, because again, it's a little bit of, I said, like yin and yang, right? And especially in Indian tech space, we see that corporates, especially coming from a startup world, think, okay, let us see how it works. And sometimes we see kind of bad signals, or I would say bad faith things like, for example, the technology is developed, but they will say, okay, they will kind of lowball the offer wherein they can pay, or they say, okay, we can build it ourselves. Now we know how to build it. So this kind of behaviors we want to kind of get away from, and that's why we launched the 100 by 100 by 100. So my advice again to startups is, do not do paid POCs. If you don't value your product, nobody else will.
Very well said, Vinayak.
Sure.
Absolutely second that, Vinayak.
Yeah. That's a key as well.
Thank you so much. Okay, I think Airmeet team, I hope you're listening to Mr. Vinayak. I think you made it a notes. Thank you so much for that. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you Surbhi. Thank you Vinayak. Thank you Rajashree. Thank you Sriraman for moderating this so well. And then I know we have more questions out there. Members, we are going to collect that one. We're going to shoot to individual members. They're going to write it for you. So please hold on with your questions there. And thank you so much. In 2 minutes, we are going to back with the next section. It will be much more interesting. Please hold on to social media.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Be safe, everyone.